And we just got word from the University of Oregon again that they have been located and that they are not in any danger. 6 in total in the span of just a little over 24 hours. It's something police and the health department say is something they have not seen. So take a closer look at these numbers. Authorities facing questions about how Cremo was able to buy guns legally, given a series of red flags over the years. And so again, all schools tomorrow in the Reedsport School District will be canceled. After hearing all this is why he was let go twice earlier that day. With the World Athletics Championships going on at the same time, fair officials are hoping to reel in some of those overseas visitors to the fairgrounds for some fun. And that's people shot outside of Wow Hall here tonight. Police need you to call in if you have any information. We're going to pull up that phone number for you here on our screen. According to head coach Dan Lanning, junior tight end Spencer Webb is the young man who died near Triangle Lake earlier this afternoon. Now, sheriff's deputies say he fell and hit his head at the rock slides.
Human beings. He was just 22 years old.
He was so young, and I think what we're seeing, all the reaction from loved ones, fans, is just speaking and a testament to his character. I mean, they have published articles back to when he was played in high school that he used to always say his dreams were coming true when he was playing football. He did have a hard upbringing. He was essentially raised by his older brother. And well, J1, it is a lot quieter out here this evening and a lot cleaner too. But if you look really closely, there are still little bits and pieces of the aftermath of this giant party that we now know led to 22 citations from the Eugene police for minor in possession and then another 5 for open container. And I did talk to some neighbors here in the area who say yesterday's party kind of just pushed them over the edge, and they say they're ready to move. I want to say it smells delicious in this area. You have so many food trucks, but this is such an important experience and opportunity for our local businesses to really serve the world. Dylan, we want to know when the drier weather, me wants to know when the drier weather
I was going to say, I think it's mainly you, but
it's me.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Our family was destroyed by Watergate, and it has never come together. Besides Nixon resigning and the whole Watergate thing, there's a human story to that. There's consequences of what people do.
The unraveling of a presidency starting 50 years ago at an office building on Virginia Avenue.
Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
In the following days and weeks, Americans were glued to their TV screens and radios, listening from the comfort of their homes as history unfolded. But inside one house in Washington, D.C., an 18-year-old boy had lived it.
And I stayed at home with my dad. One night, 50 years ago, he came back in the wee hours, 4 in the morning, I don't know what time it was. He crashed into my pitch black room, flung the light on, and said, "Saint, I need you to come upstairs. Don't ask any questions, but I need your help right now. Do as I say, please." And he turned around and out into the darkness of the basement.
St. John Hunt is the son of E. Howard Hunt, one of the members of a secret White House team known as the Plumbers. They were tasked with stopping government leaks after the Pentagon Papers were released. Howard Hunt was also a former CIA operative. A long list of titles, unknown to his son for most of his life, until June 17th, 1972, when his father came home with a suitcase.
He said, go in the kitchen, get some Windex and some towels and come back here. And I did so, and there was a large suitcase on the bed. And he said, open that, and I want you to spray and wipe down everything in the suitcase.
Hunt would later come to learn that he was wiping down eavesdropping equipment in black boxes that had been used to bug the Democratic National Convention headquarters. His father had helped organize the break-in at the DNC and watched the burglary from a room in the hotel across the street. The evidence inside that suitcase would end up at the bottom of the Potomac River.
He just said, don't ask questions. His mind was racing. I'd never seen him like that before.
Did you ever say to yourself, oh my gosh, my dad's a criminal?
I never felt that. I didn't really think of it in terms of committing a crime. I was so engulfed by the events that were, facing us, and even not sure what what was facing us, and I was so happy to be there for my dad.
A couple of days later, Hunt would dispose of more evidence for his father at familiar places not far from home.
A couple of days later, I took a typewriter of his in the dead hours of the night and went across the street to where there was a large pond. I used to go fishing with my little brother there.
He still didn't quite understand the full extent of what was happening, but at the White House, Richard Nixon did. His father would become the subject of one of Nixon's infamous tapes.
I knew when I saw his picture on the front page and this thing about the FBI looking for him in a nationwide manhunt that this was pretty big, pretty historical thing going on.
In the meantime, his mother Dorothy would get tangled in the mess as well.
That's a great shot.
Hunt says the couple were essentially blackmailing the White House, threatening to reveal details about Watergate.
The threat that my mother told the White House was that they had evidence that would literally blow the White House out of the water. And that was a direct threat, and you know, she was a smart lady. She should have known there's going to be consequences if you threaten to blackmail the President of the United States.
Dorothy sadly would die in a plane crash not long after. And to this day, Hunt believes there was more to it than a tragic accident killing 43 people. It would be a domino that set off the unraveling of Hunt's life as the presidency did during the Watergate hearings, when he would understand the full weight of what his father did and what he helped him with. His father serving nearly 4 years for his involvement.
Realizing that just about everything that I lived through in my family and was told to be the truth, to be this is why we did this and this is what happened there, was a lie.
Hunt spent the next few decades uncovering the lies. He wrote 2 books that detail not only Watergate, but more on his mother's life, telling the story that has come at a cost, not only betraying his late father, but causing a rift between his extended family.
He said, you must never tell. This is a secret that you have to take to your grave with you. And of course I didn't do that, but oops, sorry, Dad.
Yet he does not regret telling the story of what happened that night 50 years ago.
I think it's good that Watergate happened. I think it really woke the nation up. Like, well, gee, you know, we love our president, but if he's subverting the law and he thinks he's above the law, that's not what a democracy is about. And so I think it was a lesson hard learned by the nation.
A lesson that no matter how many years pass, does not have an expiration date.
That the leadership of America will be in good hands.
Carly Tinsley, KEZI 9 News. The growing problem within our education system is complicated. It's something that has multiple layers at the local, county, and even the state level. It's why I spoke to not only teachers and a professor, but those who work at the legislative level as well. Solutions will not be found overnight, but if they do not come at all, there will be ripple effects that could end up impacting your children.
This is not sustainable. You know, what we're doing right now is not sustainable long term.
At first, everyone was saying we're all in the same boat, but we're really not. We're all in the same storm, and it is hard to imagine continuing at this rate.
What's our society going to be like? We have huge shortages. We were optimistic because we really wanted our students in the classroom. We knew that was how best to teach them. We knew that we would have lots of challenges. We didn't know exactly what those challenges would be.
When 6th grade teacher Carmen Duato started this school year, there was a sense that things would feel slightly normal. After months of online learning, then hybrid, being back in person 5 days a week, face-to-face with her students, seemed like a luxury.
We were very excited to be back in the buildings.
Yet nearly 4 months into the school year, That excitement has morphed into quite the opposite. Teachers like Carmen say they are exhausted. The pandemic continues to put a strain on staff members who are constantly having to adjust lesson plans and spend extra hours preparing.
I feel like I'm just putting out fires, and I work a lot more. I mean, us teachers always kind of put in the extra hours, but I definitely work a lot more than I did before the pandemic.
Then there's the students. They've missed nearly an entire year of in-person instruction. School counselors have seen a rise in behavioral changes, instances of lashing out, leaving teachers unsure of how to teach and take care of their emotional needs.
I'm constantly having to change what I'm doing every single day because I don't know, what my students are going to be able to process and handle, and we as teachers don't even know how to help them process it or have the time to help them process that, let alone teach.
It's a feeling not mutually exclusive to those who've been in the field for years. Over at Kelly Middle School, Tim Everett is just finishing his first real year inside the classroom, despite starting his teaching career back in 2019. So he's hardly known education outside of a pandemic. But still, he knows what they're going through is not normal.
I come to work every morning at about 6:45, and I don't leave sometimes until 5 o'clock at night. And I also put in hours on the weekends, and I know that I am not alone.
The time that Tim doesn't spend with his own students, he's often helping other teachers. He sometimes uses his free period to cover other classes, since the pool of substitute teachers is dwindling as well. During many of those classes, students are now simply being supervised and not instructed.
The students' needs are not being met the way that things are, and that breaks our hearts.
The stress level among teachers is mounting. Many who were near retirement took it early after the 2020 school year. And with little improvements this year, there is a worry that more will follow.
And there's people who are, really, I'm just going to get to the end of the year.
The proof is in the numbers. In late October, the Eugene Education Association surveyed teachers to gauge their stress and exhaustion levels. Out of 800 responses, 80% said their workload and stress level is more extreme this year than any other past year. Nearly half said the stress was impacting their emotional health. And then there's the biggest concern, the number of those who were considering leaving altogether. 250 teachers. For an already stressed system, the potential of a mass exodus could shatter it.
There are a lot of teachers who are just, really on the edge.
But is the pandemic the first domino, or rather just the final straw? University of Oregon professor Jerry Rosick's research over the past year looked at just that.
And I think it was a very heavy last straw. That is breaking this camel's back for a lot of people.
Rosick and his students' research project focused on interviewing teachers locally, across the country, and even across the globe. They looked at each individual's experience during the pandemic and found one constant throughout their conversations.
And it was just a persistent sense of not being able to live up to the needs that were in front of them. And that was not new to the pandemic. It was intensified by the pandemic.
Their research found that feeling was amplified among special education teachers who were now responsible for educating parents on how to teach their children during online learning. Then there were the teachers who had transgender or LGBTQ students, unsure if they were comfortable in their home setting. It created this constant state of worry, pushing long-term educators to their wits' end.
Veteran teachers would say, if I had an option right now, I would get out.
Just like the research showed, the first few dominoes seemed to fall way before the word coronavirus was in our vocabulary. If you ask teachers, some will say it's the lack of funding that's gone on for years, while class sizes and inflation continue to grow.
Education in Oregon was not on a really solid footing before the pandemic.
Bob Estabrook, the government relations specialist for the Oregon School Employees Association, says you could look at ballot measure 5, passed back in 1990. That put a cap on the local property taxes, and at the time, those taxes were supporting all of the school districts. It then shifted the responsibility for most of the funding of public education to the state.
What that has led to over time, because There's never been a really significant change in how the legislature derives revenue, or how they are going to deal with this really critical priority that became the largest chunk of the state budget. We have continued to not get there in terms of fully funding our schools.
Bob recently spoke during the Joint Committee on Public Education, where the report on adequacy of public education funding was discussed. It documents how adequate funding is after the legislature passes a school budget. It paints a picture of what Oregon schools could look like if they were fully funded, like a higher predicted graduation rate. The report even states that the amount of money for 2021-2023 is insufficient to meet the recommended funding levels. However, it has improved compared to years past.
They are closer this year, based on the most recent budget, than they've ever been before, which is good, but still not getting our schools to the level that I think Oregonians expect them to be at.
The report lays out the reality in black and white. The average teacher salary has grown about 2% over the past decade. The statewide annual report card reflects much of the same. After adjusting for inflation, this graph shows that the salaries of only the superintendent, that's the blue line, have grown over the years, while the salaries of teachers, principals, and more, the green, red, and purple lines, have essentially been flat.
And because we have spent a long time not fully adequately funding our schools, that has compounded the challenges. So we have long-term employees who feel like the cavalry is never going to come.
Some would say at the root of this issue is a simple equation. More resources plus better pay equals better retention. But when the state has not made major adjustments in decades, will the potential of a mass exodus be their first domino of change? Bob hopes to discuss bonus pay or additional recruitment efforts to get quality employees into open positions during February's legislative session.
But it isn't just a short-term conversation. It is absolutely a long-term one, so that ideally we can stop having, every 2 years conversations about the potential crisis or the nearing crisis. The crisis is here, so we need to dive in and get it addressed.
Other lawmakers are starting to step in, like Senator Michael Dembro, who's put together a work group made up of lawmakers, classified workers, and teachers. Their goal is to have short-term solutions by January 7th and more in the following session. The hope is that if the crisis can be controlled, then the conversation around education can be changed as well, that the negative connotation will peel back, restoring a profession that many still love, who, despite all of these challenges, continue to show up each day.
We don't spend enough time talking about it, how amazing it is to be a teacher. And it's amazing. That's why I'm doing it. Because, and I can't even say this without getting emotional, because I go every day to school because of those students, because I love connecting with my students and knowing that what I do impacts the greater good.
They are the ones who sit with our children 5 days a week. They are responsible for shaping the minds of our next generation. It's a profession that many are not cut out for, but for others, it is exactly where they are meant to be. So for those who can't, don't. But for those who can, they are the ones who teach.
Every day when I see my kids, I know that I have these wonderful relationships with them, and I know that it affects them in a positive way, even though I can't meet all of their needs. But I do see some hope that some of these things are coming to light, and we might see some positive changes as a result. And I really want to be a part of that.
Now, this is an issue that tonight we merely scratched the surface of. It is the start of conversations that many hope will be the start of meaningful change. And to follow along with the activity of the Senate Education Committee, you can do so on their website under Educator Workforce Workgroup. And we will have a link on our website in this story.
Good to go?
Inside the kitchen that doubles as a classroom, chef instructor Chris Folks reignites his passion for cooking every day.
I think originally, like, just being attracted to the fire and the excitement, you know, and the intensity in kitchens, but the orchestrated chaos.
Here he teaches the next generation of chefs how to handle the heat, whether they're working over the stove
There we go.
or staring down a solid block of ice.
I've always been kind of artistic, I think.
In the back of the Oregon Coast Culinary Institute, with a table of saws and sanders, Chris also teaches his students the art of ice sculpting.
The kids are carving 1 or 2 sculptures a week, and they're learning design.
It's an art form that he sort of stumbled into while working as a sous chef years ago. Chris was tapped to create an ice sculpture for a banquet at the last second.
The person that was supposed to do it left abruptly, and out of the 7 sous chefs, I think, on site, I was the only one that had even heard of it at the time, and it was traumatic at best, and it was terrible.
From his first rocky carving of a salmon 10 years ago to now sculpting a swan in roughly 15 minutes. Chris's talent as a certified master ice sculptor and instructor has not only grown.
The time came when I could manifest my imagination, right? That's how I kind of explain it. Like anything I could come up with, I had developed the tool set, you know, the understanding of it to be able to basically make anything.
But so have his pieces.
We are building sculptures that can go up 30 feet and be 100,000 pounds.
Those grand glaciers are reserved for when Chris is outside of the classroom and competing. This one here, crafted during the World Ice Art Championships in Alaska this year. His team of 4 transformed the ice.
We chose the battle elephant, a life-size battle elephant. Actually, it was probably double life-size. It was pretty big.
Earning them first place among teams from all across the globe. But it's not the only award that Chris took home. He and one of his students, Nick Graham, competed in a 2-man carve, earning 3rd place.
Got it. There we go.
A far cry from where Nick says he was when he first tried out for the ice sculpting club.
Being handed a chainsaw and saying, okay, carve this, and he had just done it in less than 5 minutes, and he gave us 30 minutes to do it, and I still struggled. Yeah. So going from there to now competing with him in Alaska, and him and I won 3rd place, that was incredible to be a part of.
With more schooling ahead for both he and his classmate Isaac Rodriguez, they'll have more time to study under Chris. They'll also be developing a skill set very few have. In fact, Chris says he's one of the only people teaching ice sculpting in Western Oregon and across the U.S., giving his students an edge in the future.
Having that on your resume, like Nick said, is just going to open so many doors. You're going to find a list of candidates that all have the same qualifications except for one that has ice carving, and that's the person you're going to go for. And I think that's going to be a great asset.
Allowing the students to shape their careers and also a way to cool off if the heat in the kitchen or just in life flares up.
Giving some students that outlet, somewhere to put that energy that they need to go somewhere. Hopefully this can supply that for some of them as well.
In North Bend, Carly Tinsley, KEZI.